Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, by popular demand, we are going to be filming a grain system tour. So, let's get started. This is my first one of these, so bear with me here. A little bit about the facility first. This piece of ground we bought in 2014. Initially, our storage system was over on a different piece of ground. It did not have enough area to expand. We were very limited on space, so when we bought this ground, it had three-phase power right there, right beside the power shack. So we had a paved driveway, easier access off the main roads. So that's why we made the decision to go ahead and move the grain facility. Now, when I say move, the things that we moved to this location with that dryer in this far grain bin right there. Everything else is new build. So in 2016, Dad and I were farming together but separate. And what I mean by that is he farmed his land, I farmed my land, and I wanted to build a grain bin. So I bought this grain bin in 2016, and whenever I did that, we were just going to have that grain bin here, right there. And the more I talked about it, the more Dad said, well, I'm going to move that bin, that far grain bin over here, and we're going to put up a new wet bin and move the dryer, because we only had an 1,800 bushel wet tank at the old facility. So we were constantly waiting on the dryer. So that's kind of how we ended up moving. No regrets there. But anyways, so in 2016, these three bins and the dryer were moved to this location. I'll see if I can find a picture now of what this facility looked like in 2016, 17, and 18. All right, so as you can see by that picture, there used to be a swing away auger right here, a 91-foot swing away auger that hit this wet bin. And that's how we loaded grain into here for 3 years. That worked pretty well. It was a 13-inch auger. It was a big improvement over the 10-inch swing away auger we had at the old location. We could dump a truck in a little over 10 minutes. So that's what the facility looked like in 2016, 17, and 18. In 2019, we decided we wanted a little bit more storage. And when doing that, we also made up our mind that we were going to put in a receiving leg. So this was in 2019. Actually, it was right about a year ago that this leg was still being assembled. We dumped the first grain into it, I believe, first week of October 2019. So it's only been here a year. This is our receiving leg, and then they also put up this 83,000 bushel grain bin. So that's a little bit of backstory on the facility and when it got here. Now I'm going to show you how we handle grain here. Disregard this grain cart and tractor in the way, but when grain is coming into this location, it's pulling in just like this grain cart would be, and there's our pit. By pit, I mean it's just a drag. There's not an actual pit here. I believe this drag will hold like 50 or 60 bushel, but we can't just crank the doors open and run away. And we can dump a truck pretty quick into this drag. Like I said, we have an 8,000 bushel an hour leg. We can dump a truck in 9 to 10 minutes. That's quick enough for our operation at the moment. And I think it'll be quick enough as long as we either A, don't start running 2 12 rows in corn, or B, don't space out any further, meaning our operation's pretty centrally located to this grain facility. If we started getting several miles in either direction, we would maybe consider putting a pit in, but for now this is fine. So this is the first step. The grain goes into this drag, which then goes into this other drag to the leg. Once it gets to the leg, depending on its moisture, we can change the distributor up there to which bin we want to put it in. Now the leg, it will hit all the grain bins at this location at the moment. But if the grain is wet, and what I'm calling wet is anything 18% or higher, it is going into our wet tank. Maybe 17.5% or higher. We're going to put it in the wet tank, and when it goes in that wet tank, it's going to run through the drying system. But if it is dry enough, we will put it into one of the 3 other bins that we put dry corn in. So if the grain is wet, and it has to go into this wet tank, this is a 25,000 bushel wet bin. It's a flat bottom bin. We've never had any major issues with that, and it's way cheaper than a cone bottom bin. So you can get a lot of wet storage a lot cheaper by going this route. But once it goes into there, it is going through our dryer. This is an older GSI 1216. This dryer is actually a 1996 model, but we've always kept it under a roof, and it's really helped preserve it. Really, it's got more sun baked since we moved it here because we've only had this carport over 2 seasons. But this is our dryer. With this dryer, this is kind of our bottleneck if we were running a lot of wet corn. But in this area of the world, it seems like we only end up drying about half our corn. A lot of it goes right into the bins. So we can dry 600-700 bushel an hour. If we're just blowing a little bit of heat on it, trying to knock like 1 point out of it, we can move as much as 1100 bushel an hour through it. But you start running into problems then. But we are dumping our dryer through an air system. That's out here in the back of the dryer. So once the dryer, this is a continuous flow dryer, so it is constantly metering grain out through this air system. Now when I say air system, I mean that there is a blower right there pushing air down through this pipe, and that's what's moving the grain to the bins that it's going to go to. Here's the air system. I don't like this 90-degree turn it makes right here, but that's where we're at with it. That's going to probably be a problem in the next year or two. There's going to be a lot of wear on that elbow, and it could blow apart at some point, and that's not going to be fun, but it probably will happen at some point. This is kind of the distributor for the air system. Here's where we select what bin we want to blow grain to. Unfortunately, we don't have the air power to move grain to this new bin. So how we get around that is we either dump dry corn in there, that's ideal, right out of the truck into that bin, or we transfer grain out of this bin or this bin into the big bin. Now that we have all the bins tied back into the leg for reclaim, that's not that big of a deal. Last fall we didn't. The only way to transfer grain was with a semi and an auger, and it took forever. Now once the grain is in the bins, we can monitor that grain. This is new, we've just got this system. This is an AGI SURETRACK bin managing system. So this is our first year using this, we're pretty excited about it. But basically there are cables hanging up in the bins. I'll show you those right now actually. Now this is on all 4 bins, and there's different amounts of cables based on the size of the bins. I believe there's only 3 in this one, but this is the smallest bin here. So this is a 25,000 bushel bin. Yeah, there's 4 cables in here. But you can see the cables there. Those have sensors in them that are going to read the temperature of that grain. And based on those readings, they're going to detect potential bad spots of grain. And they're also, what the real neat part is, going to be running the fans on these bins. These all have, well, these 3 bins have 15 horse centrifugal fans on them, and I believe the big one has a 25 horse, but that bin managing system is what's controlling this fan. So that's kind of how we are managing our grain. Pretty excited about this. We can basically tell the software when we think we're going to start marketing the grain out of these bins, and it will run that fan to hydrate or dehydrate accordingly. And what I mean by that is, we're going to start putting soybeans in this far bin. In Ohio, we usually end up harvesting soybeans dry. Like, we're supposed to market them at 13%. They usually end up being 9%, and you don't get any bonus points for too dry beans. With that SURETRACK system, we will be able to rehydrate those beans to 13%. At least that's the goal. And at that point, you're making money. Now, if you are interested in an AGI system, we are not sponsored by AGI, but we do have a landing page, meaning if you click on the link in the description, it will take you to AGI's page. And I believe if you use the code Brian, you will get a free trial version of their software. Now, you won't have the bin managers, obviously, but you can see everything else that they offer. They do offer marketing programs and stuff like that. So check that out in the description, and we'll get on with the tour. All right, so now that we've covered how we bring grain into this grain facility and how we manage that grain, let's talk about how we get rid of the grain. So when it comes to moving the grain out of the bins, we use the leg for that too. So it is a receiving leg, but it is also how we load out of this facility, is with that leg. All the bins are tied back in via augers back to the leg. Now, yes, we could have used drags. Augers were much cheaper. They're probably not as easy on the grain. They're probably going to wear out sooner, but that's what we could afford. That's what we did. So as you can see, this one ties back into this jump auger, which ties back into the leg. I don't really like how many motors we have, but as you can see, there's just not enough room to get all 3 of these augers into the leg right there. Now, one thing that the millwrights did when they were building this, they put these little inspection holes. At first I thought those were kind of stupid, but with all this being closed up, everything being closed, you really can't see how full these augers are. So that is actually extremely useful, and I'm glad we have those. It works very well. Now, once the grain goes back into the leg for loading out, shoots up to the leg, we would have the distributor turn to load out. There is no holding tank up here. There's just a 12-inch pipe to load out with. When we're running at full capacity here, we can load a truck out in about 10 minutes. If we're running at full capacity, we load out right in here. Main downfall is it's very dusty. These walls are white, or at least they were. That's kind of the only downfall really. And you have to kind of time it, meaning if we had a holding tank up there, you would just shut a chute off to that holding tank and then you're done. There's like probably a 15-20 second delay from when you turn off the unloader to that bin to when grain quits coming out. Maybe even longer. Maybe it's 30 seconds, but a little bit of a delay. So that's how we handle grain here. Now let's talk about a little bit of the dimensions of this place. Bin capacity wise, we have a 25,000 bushel bin, a 42,000 bushel bin, and a 42,000 bushel bin, and an 83,000 bushel bin. Bring our grand total up to right around 190,000 bushel, I think, somewhere in there. Now that's the bushel capacity. I believe this is a 36 foot by 9 ring. Those are 42 foot by 9 ring, both of those, and this is a 48 foot by 14 ring. And when I say 48 foot, I mean the diameter of the bin, and the rings are how many rings of sheet metal up they go. So like I said before, our leg is a 8,000 bushel an hour leg. Downspouts coming out of it, they are 12 inches in diameter. You kind of size your leg for your downspouts that you're willing to spend money on. Downspouts aren't cheap. There is a lot of feet of downspout up there. And basically to get a much bigger capacity leg, it was going to add quite a bit of money because we'd have to put bigger downspouts up. And economically, this was the best size for us. Now a little bit about this drive-through. All right, so I made an error in recording this. I talked all about this drive-through and didn't record a thing. So we're back over here a different day. This drive-through is 60 foot long, 20 feet wide. Now it does not have to be 20 foot wide. The drive-through at the other farm is, I think, 12 foot wide, maybe 13. But we wanted it wide enough. We didn't have any clearance issues with trucks. We didn't have to worry about hitting the drive-through just right. And we can pull a grain cart in there. Idea being that we can pull in here, and if we had to, we can dump that gravity wagon or a grain cart right into this pit, and we can. Now to the peak, I think it's 22 foot tall. Now we did that, we offset the peak a little bit. Like the peak is right here, it's not over the pit. That is so that we can dump one of our dump trucks in here. We have a couple straight trucks, and yeah, we can dump them in here. Now if we had dump trailers, that probably wouldn't work, but we don't. We have hopper bottoms and 2 dump trucks. They work in here. Now as you can see, this whole side, the bottom 8 feet are open, and this side they're not. Now we did that because we thought we'd like to have this open so we can see what's going on. And yeah, that is nice, but I do think we are going to eventually enclose this. It's nice, but it also lets a lot of wind in, and it gets pretty cold in here. So what the plan is, we're gonna put this part right here, there's like, I don't know, 12 foot or so, we're gonna put that on a sliding door. So basically when we're over here working, we can open this up, and when we're dumping trucks, we can still see what's going on out here. I like to be able to see what's going on there. I'd really hate to lose that much visibility. So that's kind of how we're going to solve that dilemma. And this is where I'm going to tell a little boo-boo on Dad. He ordered a door for this in, a garage door. We were going to put a garage door in here. There would be one in here now, but Dad ordered a 20-foot door for a 20-foot opening, and it didn't fit. Inside we do have pretty good lighting in here. Those just got hooked up. If you don't know, the electrician that wired all this, he is a family friend, and he kind of just works on it whenever he gets the chance. So we just got the lights wired up fairly recently. Put a picture in here now, but it does light this place up pretty well. Now this room here, this is going to be the test shack. This is where we will come in here, get a moisture sample, and basically we write down every load that we dump. So we don't have scales, but we do just kind of try to keep somewhat of a record of how many loads we dump into this place every year. So that's what will happen in there, and I'm sure there'll be a coffee pot knowing us. One thing we do need to do in this drive-through is figure out some kind of dust solution. As you can see, it's really dusty in here. We've thought about exhaust fans. We tried hanging fans. I don't know what we're gonna do just yet. Now we built everything up here. Like the drive-through is built up. I mean, as you can see, we're sloped, and our drag is above ground. We did all of that because at the other grain facility, we fight water. We still fight water over there, and we didn't want to fight water here. At this place, everything is sloped down, so the lowest point is on the other side of the drive-through. In fact, it's kind of designed to where all the water runs under here, and it kind of helps keep this cleaned out. See, here's the back side of the drive-through. can see it really pushes that corn out through there. And then we have a drain right here taking that water out of here. So that works pretty well. Now, things that I would like to change, or future plans or regrets. One thing that I would maybe do different. If you notice, there's quite a bit of space between the bins. Now, we did that because we had the space. I don't know if I'd do that again, just because the more you space those bins out, the taller your leg has to be to reach those bins. At the same time, it is nice that there's 6 foot between the bins, because you can work on stuff easier, you can get stuff through there. Oh, one of the regrets, we did this because we're kind of lazy, but we'd had stairs going up this bin, and we just did a platform over to this bin, so we can check both of them with only climbing one set of stairs. Only problem is this is our wet bin. So we need to know how full it is often. Well, we can only check that by going up there, whereas if we had steps on this bin, we would probably just walk up the steps, hit the side of the bin until we found out the level of the grain. Not a major regret, but it is kind of inconvenient sometimes. So I don't know, it's kind of a trade-off. I'd maybe change that though, maybe. Other than that, so far I don't regret everything being out of the ground versus having a pit and all my leg being down in a hole and all that stuff. Now, some future plans would be, like I say, this dryer is kind of the holdup at the moment. So maybe someday we would do away with this dryer, get rid of the air system. The air system is definitely a holdup. If we had more air, we could probably run this dryer a little bit harder, but we don't. I think it's only a 4-inch air system, so we are running pretty much at max on that. I would get rid of the air system. I would get rid of that dryer. I'd probably put in a tower dryer, and it would be located right about here, right in this area. And I would put in a dry leg right here. So a leg would be what would be dumping that dryer instead of an air system, a little bit easier on the grain. And since we have the tower and the spouting, to put an actual leg in is not that costly. One other thing, speaking of tower, we went with a ladder on the outside of the leg instead of stairs, because stairs are a lot of money for a leg. Tower, I really wish, like in a perfect world, we would have put stairs on it, because I've got to climb up there and grease that leg. And stairs would be nice for that. It'd be easier to carry tools and stuff like that up there, like a grease gun. But we went cheap. I don't regret that, because I just have a hard time spending an extra $25,000 for steps versus ladders. But I do wish that we had ladders on there. Other regrets, I know we already had this bin and we moved it. I wish instead of 2 bins, we just had one bigger bin with a side draw. This was our first bin with a side draw. And if you're on the fence designing the grain system on whether to put a side draw in or not, put the side draw in. That is by far the best way to load that I've been around. In fact, moving forward, I think our plan is to transfer grain out of these 3 bins into that one, more than likely, when we load out, and just use the side draw. Now, doing that, we will pull the centers out of this bin occasionally, so we don't get in any trouble with that side draw, but loading out with the side draw is awesome. Now, this is the big bin with the side draw. That's the baffling for the side draw. The side draw does add a little bit more cost to this bin, but like I say, well worth it. Other future plans, someday I'd like to have a 100,000 bushel bin here, or maybe another 80. Not sure on the size, but this is where the next bin would go. So we have the electric for one more bin, and price wise, I mean, bins are expensive, but it would be relatively easy to do one more bin eventually. Right now, that's not in the immediate future, but moving forward, that would be where the next bin would go. Bin here, dryer there, that would be the next big upgrades over here. With these bins all being in a row, we also have it to where if we need more storage, we can just start parking bins in a line that way, and we'd have to hit them with drags, but that would be how we would accomplish that. Now over here in the electric shack, this was where we did our testing, our moisture testing stuff. Like I said, we're gonna be doing that out there from now on, but this is still kind of the break room. It's still a little bit disheveled, some electric stuff going on here, but the electrician's still working on this panel, so that's why it's all unbuttoned. But this is where we eat lunch a lot. When we're hauling out, sometimes during harvest, if we're close, we'll stop here. Our wives will bring food up here, things along those lines. So this is kind of the break room. And then, of course, the facilities. Now, eventually, we would love to asphalt this. Unfortunately, it's just a little bit cost prohibitive at the moment. We have poured a lot of concrete over here. We've basically poured concrete in places that grain spills a lot. And yeah, it's been really nice. Anytime we spill grain, it's a lot easier to clean up this way. Now, if you're designing a grain facility, a couple recommendations I would make: visit as many as you can and do a lot of studying on it. Try to plan for the future. That was one thing at the previous places we've stored grain in has really taught me. They were designed in the 70s. They were perfect for their time, but expansion really wasn't in the plans. So they were great for their time, but they were quickly obsolete. So I'd really think about how you're going to expand with what your current design is. So I would really think about plans for the future. Other things I would consider is water, drainage. If you don't have good drainage, I would probably keep your stuff above ground if possible. Also, like I say, side draw, highly recommend. Also, we don't have ladders on the outside of the bins, we have steps. Also highly recommend. Other things we have platforms on top of all the new bins. Big fan. And if you've ever had to work up there on something, it is really nice to be on a platform and not on the side of a bin roof. Another thing I would highly recommend, centrifugal fans instead of the axial fans, much quieter, and they seem to be much more efficient and do a lot better job. All right, guys, that pretty much concludes the tour.
Yeah,
thanks for watching. Yeah, we're leaving, aren't we, bub?
Yeah.
What are we gonna go do?
We don't eat Pappy.
We're gonna eat some dinner. So yeah, we're gonna go home and eat some dinner. Thanks for watching, guys. If there's enough interest, we'll do a grain bin tour in the old complex too, and you can kind of see the differences between the two. If you are interested in the old complex, let me know in the comments below. Also, one quick thing, this whole facility was built by Sims Construction. That is our local GSI dealer. That's who we've dealt with. Great guys, they've really taken care of us. We've nearly never had any complaints with them, and we were Sims Construction customers long before YouTube, so it has absolutely nothing to do with that. They just have great service. So check them guys out if you're in Southern Ohio and you have some grain bin needs. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. This place is going to see some heavy use in the next week to 2 weeks, so stand by for that, and you can see this place in action. Hey guys, don't forget to thumbs up the video.